All right, it's in between. I teased it. I'm super excited to talk to my two favorite comic book aficionados about having gone to see The Batman by Matt Reeves, which...
So do you find yourself making yourself have to say The Batman instead of Batman?
The Batman?
I'm, yeah, I do.
Kind of like the Suicide Squad versus Suicide Squad?
But to me, it's kind of important to this film to call it that. And so, yes, I am forcing myself to say
Speaking of which,
Batman.
did you finish Peacemaker?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I think I was the one who hadn't finished it last time we chatted.
Have you
finished
finished
Okay,
it?
then
Okay.
let's get to that. Let's start with this. Directed by Matt Reeves, who I do feels kind of important. Let's talk about this because we're about to hit two of his films,
He
which
does the last two of the...
are
Planet of the
pretty
Apes.
great contributions to this franchise. He is a director with an aesthetic that I've never seen The Pallbearer, which he made with David Schwimmer,
That
but
one
I've
I
seen
have not
every
seen
other
either.
one of his films, and I don't think that I've ever seen a bad movie that he's made.
I don't know his entire
Here,
oeuvre.
I've got him up right here on IMDb. So, as a director, he has made, and I'll start at the top, The Pallbearer with David Schwimmer. He did some TV work. I'm not going to count that. I'm talking films. Cloverfield.
Oh, but you would for Connor.
Fine.
I'm just kidding.
Reality, which I don't know what it is. Homicide: Life on the Street. Gideon's Crossing. He directed 5 episodes of Felicity, but he's one of J.J. Abrams' best friends, so that kind of explains
Yeah.
why.
Oh, that's right. He did Cloverfield.
He did
forgot that. All right.
Cloverfield. He did Let Me In, which I just watched again the other day. It's not as good as the original it's based on, but it's pretty freaking
Yeah.
good. Then he does Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, War for the Planet of the Apes, which leads to the Batman. So the guy's pretty damn good at what he does. What did we think of the Batman?
I loved it.
I really enjoyed it.
Outside of having to go pee in the middle of it and going, is this the part that I can go now?
I know, that I kept
Is
on
this
having-
the part that I can
God,
leave?
can
Well,
I go now, Todd?
And
Sean
Chris
leans
was
over
like,
to me.
Not yet.
Sean leans over to me because I'd already seen. He's like, "Is it safe to go pee?" And I'm like, "Well, this kind of happens here, but yeah, that's not too bad. Go."
What I really liked about the movie is even at moments that were slower in pacing, I was still enthralled with what was happening visually and what was happening overall to not want to leave my seat.
Right.
I wanted to stay.
While he was not the world's greatest detective, I like the fact that they made him a detective in this one.
Yeah, I read some criticism of that where, like, he's supposed to be the world's greatest detective. And I thought, but the best detective stories are those ones where the detective isn't necessarily
is a
Sherlock
step
Holmes
behind, yeah.
figuring it out. He's stumbling into a little more information that keeps leading into a darker hole.
He's also young at this point,
And he's
so
just learning.
so
Year
we're,
two,
we're learning.
yeah.
He's picking up these things. He's far ahead of what the police are doing, but got to give the guy some slack.
Raise your hand if you miss seeing pearls being shattered and falling onto the street.
Not me.
So happy not to have an
No
origin
rehash of the
again.
origin.
I don't need that.
So I
Although I think they did kind of tease you in the beginning when you're watching through the binoculars and you see a little kid. sword
I
playing,
thought-
you're like,
yeah, I
oh, is
thought that was
supposed to
pretty
be young
clever.
Bruce
I assume
Wayne?
that's where they were going at that point. Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought it was supposed to be Bruce Wayne. Yeah, agreed.
So I told both these guys that I took my wife to see it. My wife, Shelley, is not a fan of wanting to see something she's already seen. Shelley and I diverge upon when it comes to creative stuff where, I will go see Bruce Springsteen 1,000 times because no show is the same. You're going to see different performances. Shelley's like, I've seen it, don't need to see it. So when I told her we're going to see the Batman, she's like, I've seen Batman. I'm like, I think this one's going to be really different. And she walked out of it for her, and this is humongous for her to say it, that this was the best Batman she'd ever seen, that Robert Pattinson was more like what she kind of envisions that real Batman would be. And she even said right away, thank God we didn't have to see them walking down the alley again.
Although somebody did point out, if you do the math, that they probably died around 2001. So you can put in your whatever movie came out in 2001 that Bruce Wayne was seeing. So he could have been seeing Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back or something.
Yeah.
At that
Well,
point.
and at that point, you keep on putting in Zorro, and it could be a revival of Zorro. Maybe his dad liked it as a kid and takes him to see it. But I think it's best that it's not in there. And I like your idea that he's such a new entity within what he's doing in this world that he's figuring out. Now, I did read the prequel book that came out.
Mm-hmm.
It's real short, and it's well written, but it's more like almost a kid's book. And it does talk about a couple of things for him. It tells that he is bored with school, but he's very interested in forensics and begins studying that at an early age to fill his mind, as well as that he gets into a muscle car phase, which kind of explains how the Batmobile becomes what it is.
Yeah.
And I did, for me, I love the Batmobiles. This is easily my favorite Batmobile as far as the power of that car and the reveal of the car in the movie. I was just like,
It's
oh,
like almost
holy
like an
shit.
animal.
Yeah.
No,
I'm surprised they only used it for one scene. Though.
Yeah, sure.
It was probably one of my favorite moments was in the reveal of Batmobile. I was like a kid again. I was just so excited to see this thing happen. And it was also there are moments or elements in the movie where you could go too camp or too ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And the reveal of the Batmobile and that random ramp that pops down at some point that drives over it, those are both moments that are very comic book moments.
Absolutely.
And they could have gone over the top with them, and they dial it back just enough so that I can I'm so excited, as opposed to laugh at them.
Right.
But it was close. It was really, don't get me wrong, it was very close. The ramp was very close.
But I think that anything like that, the truth between genius or stupidity is always a fine line, because you can take those brilliant thoughts and go too far with it. And I do think that it's very convenient that ramp comes down, but there's convenience across a story 1,000 times that I'm willing to forgive. And to me, just the entirety of that chase.
That Selena Kyle wears the same pair of boots everywhere she goes. That's how Batman figures out who she was from the pictures and everything, because she's wearing the exact same pair of boots. That's a story plot. I mean, if she had worn a different pair of boots, would it be a completely different story?
My only problem with the car chase, and this is not the film's fault, it's the marketing's. I wish that we had not seen the shot of the Batmobile coming through the flames in the marketing.
Oh, I got you. I
honestly, I have to go back and watch that commercial.
Sorry, could you say that again?
No, we can't. Thank you.
We have another guest host. Hello, Siri.
That shot is just so massively powerful that I wish they'd saved that for the film. But I also know why they wanted to market with it, because it's an amazing sequence.
And it's one of those things where you don't know until you've already seen the movie. But I'm surprised how much of the couple of end shots from the movie that they put in, with Riddler being captured in the diner, is from the last half hour of the movie.
Right.
I only watched the trailer once, and I thought it was a jumbled mess, and I couldn't make any sense of it, so I put it out of my mind.
Really?
So I walked into the film not really remembering much of any of it all. And now that you guys are bringing it back up, I'm like, I kind of want to go back and see what they teased us with again.
A lot of the best
trailer.
images are there.
I just remember it being just a mess. The trailer did not do me any favors in wanting to go see the film, other than wanting to go see the film.
Right. Another standout for me, and it's now that I've seen it 3 times, I cannot. And Shelley's even like, "You're obsessed with this." The cowl in this film,
where you can actually move his head
and the fact that when he takes it off, it crumbles in his hands because it's leather instead of being a big piece of plastic. Holy shit! They finally got a cowl right that isn't just a big piece of garbage on his head. And also the sculpting to the back of his skull. It's beautiful.
And you could see it was kind of beaten up. It had cuts under his eyes.
When we have a very, very kind of lo-fi mask for Catwoman as well, that's basically just kind of
a ski mask.
A ski mask, right.
That happens to have a couple of points on them.
Cut in such a way that doesn't really obstruct her identity. But, I mean, it's kind of a neat way of, you get the angles, you get the shots, and you're like, oh, this evokes a cat.
It's very evocative of that classic image of Catwoman. But, Matt Reeves has even said that especially with the villains, he wanted this to be, instead of an origin story of Batman, he wanted it to be more the beginnings of Batman and his rogues gallery. Just, these aren't even Penguin is called the Penguin, but he's not this maniacal person yet that he will. Yeah, he hasn't become what he will be.
Well, and the issue that I always have with the Penguin in the comics or in media is you have an opportunity to make him too ridiculous or too campy.
When you have him in the pinstripe suit.
Or you have him too grotesque, like we had in Tim Burton.
Danny DeVito.
And this is the first real portrayal of Penguin that I could believe him being the owner of the Iceberg Lounge. I could believe him being involved in the criminal scene in Gotham. I could believe him being a mob boss. Even when I see him in the comic books, I don't believe it, because he's always drawn as
a fat little guy with a big long
nose
and a monocle.
And depending upon their artist, he's got an umbrella or he's got penguins walking around him or something like that. This felt like a real person.
But Colin Farrell's phenomenal. Right.
If you hadn't known that was Colin Farrell, except for every a word every now and then,
or his eyes will do something, you're kind of like,
But yeah,
In Bruges, that film that he made probably almost 20 years ago now. I love that movie, and so I've watched enough that could see him, but man, what a performance that is. And Jeffrey Wright's fantastic as Gordon too. I know a lot of people are upset because an African American play. I'm like, give me a fucking break. Jesus.
What? Really?
Yeah, there's been some scuttle like Gordon's not black, and I'm like, oh my god.
Gordon's also not real. How about that?
No, he did a great job as Gordon.
I love Jeffrey Wright. I've never seen. He's one of those I've never seen him in something I didn't like him in.
I think the only person that I'd mention didn't really interest me was Alfred. I thought Alfred was very kind of one note throughout the entire thing, and it's not Andy Serkis's fault. It's just
I think it's just what they did with Alfred.
There just wasn't much there for the character. He gives us some sense that he alludes to the fact that maybe he's one of the reasons why Bruce was training. So we might have some Alfred as secret agent background history at some point, because that's also been talked about in the comic books before. Because we don't know where Batman trained, but it sounded like that Alfred helped him somewhere.
Military background,
had some type of help in that, and he was also helping him solve some of the puzzles. So you see
in
kind
that
of where
prequel novel, it tells both of those. You're exactly spot on.
Okay.
That talks about that they did training sessions, and at first that Alfred kicked Bruce's ass all the time, but Bruce finally learned and got better. Alfred did a lot of things to help him learn forensics, etc. So they worked together. And what I did like, and I agree with you, there's not enough Alfred in it to really get a sense of the character. What I did like is it's not just another rehash of the kind gentleman that's a father figure in Bruce's life.
With your cup of tea ready for you.
I mean, Michael Goff and Michael Caine, those are great actors that have portrayed Alfred. I'm just glad to see a different take on Alfred. I would like to see more of too. Cinematography of it's freaking gorgeous, but it's by the same guy, Greg Fraser, I think.
Ephraim Zimbalist, he played Alfred too.
That's true, but voice only. But yes. But it's the same guy that shot Dune, and probably is going to win the Academy Award for that. It's just a phenomenal cinematographer. I thought the music is to bring in actually for the first time the sorrow of Bruce that he carries around, the great sadness. I thought that music portrayed that. And the interesting thing is, did you hear that he actually wrote the music before they shot a frame of film?
No.
Because he's worked with Reeves forever. And Reeves called him, and it was when he was doing post-production of War of the Planet of the Apes that he got the call from Warner Brothers to do for the interview. And he said, I kept turning it down because he's like, I'm in post for War, and I just can't talk. And he said, finally my agent called and said, Matt, you're going to want to take the call because it's for Batman. and he said, my agent knew Batman's one of my very favorite things in the whole world. And I was like, I'll be there. And they walk in, the whole story, Ben Affleck's involved, and he said, this is great. I'm not the guy for this. And they said, what would you do if we gave it to you? And he told him I would take him to a detective, all these things. And he walks out of it knowing he got it. So he calls this Giancarlo or whatever the guy's last name is that does the score and says, we're doing Batman. And he said before I knew it, he had sent me an MP3 of the stuff he had written, and that whole simple dun. Yeah, that thing was just there. And so when Robert Pattinson auditions, they have to put him in a bat suit. And I just watched this interview the other day, so it's so fresh. Nerd. They put him in a bat suit, and he gets Val Kilmer's bat suit. And he's auditioning, and Reeves pulls him aside and says, before we go in, because he said, I knew I wanted Robert. I wanted him to nail it. He said, by the way, this is the music. And Robert was like, you don't ever have the music. And he said it was always the thing that brought him into the character. It evoked that sadness that he carries with him. Wow. Powerful shit.
So my husband sent me a meme that's on a billboard, I guess, somewhere, or somebody put it on a billboard. It cracks me up. It says, Robert Pattinson, worst vampire ever, took him 14 years to become a bat.
Nice. So
I do like the fact they address actually wearing makeup around his eyes.
I loved that.
I still remember in Batman Returns when
he takes it
Michael
off and
Keaton,
it's gone.
He's got it on. He takes off the cowl and it's completely gone.
Well, they said this in the screen test also that they made that part of the screen test, which was almost like putting on your war paint. Mm-hmm. And he did it 2 fingers to slide across, and then it became this whole reveal to it. And they decided from that point on it would always be a part of it.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it's very Crow-esque in the sense that you have that kind of black makeup on to become this character, and then it begins to be able to wash away or move off when emotion is coming around. I think of course it makes sense.
I also, one other thing with the cowl and I noticed this last time that I went, it's the first cowl to me that actually kind of obstructs my idea of what Robert Pattinson looks like underneath it, that would guard his identity. And part of it's because if you look at whoever made this leather, they actually insert cheekbones. So it comes out and it makes his face look different. It's fucking brilliant. I cannot wait. There's an Art of Batman that's supposed to come out next month. I'm going to read that like 400 times just because I'm fascinated by the aesthetic of this film.
I do like the fact that they've officially announced we're getting a Penguin show for HBO Max.
Yeah.
It's official.
And then the Arkham thing is kind of still in play.
Gotham PD became Arkham Asylum.
Which Matt Reeve says is going to be almost a horror show.
Yeah, which makes me wonder if that's going to be, maybe we'll get Hugo Strange and
I would hope
a bunch
so.
of inmates
I do like
in
Hugo
there.
Strange. I think he's an interesting, fascinating character.
I do too, except that there was that one time they talked about doing him and bringing Robin Williams in to play him, and I thought, I loved Robin Williams, but Jesus Christ, if you make Hugo Strange into a crazy kooky, I would have
he could be
shit my
serious.
pants.
I mean, Good Will Hunting.
He can be. He could be. It's just
Well, he can't be anymore.
no, he can't, unfortunately. But he is a terrifying character if done right, in my opinion.
The one thing that I'm not a fan of in this particular universe of the Batman is I'm not a fan of crazy Martha Wayne. It's never been a plot line that I've really ever enjoyed. It comes up every so often. It wasn't ever there, and then I forgot where it was first introduced. But
it just feels like such a trope, the crazy woman.
Yeah, I've never really been a huge fan of that. But it was trying to connect these families together and give a reason why Thomas Wayne would go to such extents.
It made me wonder if some version of Court of Owls would eventually work its way into this. It feels like that kind of interweaved.
I haven't read anything on this. I only have people that walk in the store and tell me what they've read.
Okay.
But the two plot lines that everybody tells me that are being discussed are Court of Owls and Hush, right?
Yeah,
And both of those would keep us in this
More
particular
grounded
this type
universe,
of
yeah.
universe. Yeah, both of them would keep in this type of universe for sure.
I would find it very interesting. Another thing I really liked was that the character by the end of it, and I'm not going to say what he says, but he evolves. He knows he has to evolve who he is and what he presents to the city. And I thought, wow, that's an interesting take on Batman for the cinematic world, because we've never seen that.
He just
My
seems to be
fear,
vengeance
and
every night.
and that whole thing of the boots sounding as he walks up on people, and is that what they're seeing and how they're perceiving? Because it's about fear. And I thought that opening sequence where they look in the shadows and I am the shadows.
Is not just because he's going to be there, but he might be there.
Right, and the bad guys are constantly looking in the shadows, but by the end of the movie, he knows he needs to be even more than that. And I thought that's pretty. We showed evolution of a character.
And I feel like a storyline like Court of the Owls could allow the first part of a film to allow Bruce to become Bruce Wayne. And
I agree.
Batman to be a little bit more heroic, and then pull him back down into this underworld, and this gritty area where he cannot get back out. I mean, I feel like it's a good plot line where we could start where he is becoming somebody else,
Right.
Or a hero, and then pulling him back down.
If they were to do that, and I do think that that's where we need to evolve next, is because this is an interesting film because the character actually wants to be Batman all the time. It's the first cinematic world where we've seen where he almost does not want to acknowledge the Bruce Wayne element of his life, and he just wants to stay in this to fight through his pain. And now he knows he needs to evolve. Are we going to see a bit of the suave playboy? I don't want him to be a playboy as much as maybe he's a public figure.
I feel like they explored so much of Bruce as the mask, and this Batman is the character in this film, and his issues with his family and whether his father was guilty of this and whether the idea of killing, that I would be really, really upset if he didn't have some evolution by the next film.
I think
it would not be believable to me if he's just the same character.
I'm
not saying he couldn't be pulled back into that character,
right,
but I'd be a little disappointed
because of my love that I've stated 1,000 times of what Reeves did for the Planet of the Apes. I think that Caesar's character shows growth and change within the two films, especially when you consider he came into a world that was created by somebody else, and he said, here's where I want to take it and here's what we're going to do. That character changes as it ebbs and flows. I'd be shocked if we don't see that same aesthetic here. So I'm super excited about it. I could go on all day, but I know we also want to touch on Peacemaker. Have you finished it now?
I did finish Peacemaker, yes.
So I'll start by saying I knew zero about this character before the Suicide Squad.
Nobody knew zero about this character before this thing.
What is that really true?
He was a popular character at one point, and then kind of fell out of popularity as they did in the 50s and stuff. But then he was also the basis for the comedian in Watchmen.
Oh, really?
Alan Moore wanted to write a story using Peacemaker. And,
I remember that.
And The Question and all these characters, and he was told he couldn't do it, so he made analogs of it, and Peacemaker is what the comedian became.
Well,
outside of kind of some high points in the 90s, he's largely been kind of a side character, not really brought to this kind of focus at all. I mean, nobody walked into the store a year ago was like, "Oh, give me some Peacemaker stuff." What's his latest issue? He was just a side character.
Seeing the Suicide Squad, I was never a John Cena fan, so I didn't latch onto the character while watching the movie.
It's Cena.
Is it Cena?
Yeah.
Okay. So when this series comes out, and the first thing I see is even before Sean sends it, that the opening is a
him dancing
musical dance number. I was like, "Oh, damn you, James Gunn, for actually tapping into the shit that I love." And then I watch, even this is before you ever sent shit about it, and I watched it, and I'm like, "Okay, that's clever. Fuck, I don't want to watch this show." Holy shit! I was floored across the board by that show.
What I like about the Peacemaker, this portrayal of Peacemaker, particularly in the first couple of episodes, is that he is everything that I think of about modern American politics as viewed by the middle class man. That's just kind of what I see from him. I feel like he's like everything.
What are you talking about? Sweet cheeks is a compliment. She's got great cheeks. No, that's not what it means.
But yeah, he reminds me of so many of my friends.
Well, he surprised me as an actor.
And the fact that he could play piano and...
Not well, but yes, he could.
Well, there was a broken piano.
Do what?
There was a broken piano. It wasn't a perfect piano.
I'm talking about his form. That's, hey. But he did it.
But he really plays piano. Right?
Does he really?
Yeah.
Of course, there's the negative backlash that James Gunn cast his now fiance in the role, but... first off, that's been happening for fucking ever. Jesus, I mean, Orson Welles made Lady of Shanghai with his wife at the time. Why can't now? Oh my God, gorgeous redhead. Why am I forgetting Rita Hayworth? And so, I mean, directors have been working with the women.
He cast Jenna Fisher in Slither, and they were married at one point.
And what the fuck's business is that of anyone? Because she ends up being good in the role, and I'm okay with that.
Well, this goes back to our conversation of Estella Warren and everything like that. There just seems to be a lot of hate for women who do well.
Yeah.
Right? And they have to be pulled apart because of their attachments to somebody else, or because they, modeled before they actually got an important gig or a good role,
right.
So it's
that's the same as so Euphoria on HBO. Do either of you watch that show?
No, I think you've recommended it to me.
I watched like the first episode and I was like, I'm out. I can't do it. I can't do it.
It's an incredibly good show. It's very hard to watch, but it's something that my daughter Abby and I watch and discuss often. There's one young lady in it, though, that got just blistered this season. She ends up playing a drug addict that really is kind of rather vapid, right? But she also shows up and her lips are so distorted from like injections. Well, it turns out that she started as a adult actress. And the world's like, you're slut. And like, she's now on Euphoria, which is probably one of the more acclaimed TV shows. What business is it of yours? What she did before now, if she's doing good work here.
Do you watch Sylvester Stallone movies?
I try not to, but...
Well, I mean, he used to do porn. I mean,
that's true.
Come on. But are they going to slut-shame him?
I'm just... between social media and whatnot, I'm just sick of all that.
Hey, you watch Rutger Hauer movies? He used to do porn.
Did he really?
Yeah.
No, it's the way we treat our women in any media is just off mic. I talked about a friend who had some issues, who's an artist who had some issues recently for the internet, just kind of taking a big old dump on her. And
do you see people like
it's just maddening
with the changes they made in Daredevil? Did you see a backlash in that?
Changes in Daredevil
in the comics. Whenever Elektra is now Daredevil, so it's a female Daredevil.
Well, so what was the? Let me think about this. There was the.
I didn't know that.
Crap. Hang on, I had a story. I was gonna forget what it was.
Don't think about it. A writer I like named Chip Zdarsky has been writing Daredevil for a while, and I think Daredevil had to go to prison, and so Elektra says, "I'm Daredevil now."
Okay.
I had a dude come in who'd been reading a particular character, and why am I drawing a blank on this character? He'd been reading a particular character for a long time.
Superman.
Oh, I know. It was the Doctor Strange, Death of Doctor Strange.
Oh, okay.
The Death of Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange dies, and Clea comes in and becomes the new Sorcerer Supreme.
Okay.
At least for the start of the first issue. And he was just kind of like, don't want to read this. I'm not really sure if I want to read this. And I knew exactly what he was talking about. He's somebody who said, I think that Stephen Strange has to be Doctor Strange, and there's a woman that is stepping into this role, and I don't want to read it. And I had to say, did you enjoy Death of Doctor Strange? He goes, I thought it was a great miniseries. I said, this is the same team carrying us forward. So let's follow this story through, because I promise you, if you enjoy the last 5 issues, you'll enjoy this take. And I promise you, these characters never ultimately go away.
Yeah.
We're going to get Jane Foster as Thor. Let's enjoy those times. We're going to get Dick Grayson in the Batman costume. Let's enjoy those times.
Right.
Because these companies
Legacy.
will never get rid of their legacy.
I mean, even when DC was going to do their 5G thing and have all the old superheroes retire, you know that there would always be a Clark Kent Superman no matter what. There would always be a Bruce Wayne Batman no matter what. Just because they make money off that shit, they're not going to abandon it.
I think the thing that bothers me a little bit now is they have to distinguish the non-legacy character by always having their first formal name in it. So it's not just Spider-Man, it's Miles Morales Spider-Man. It's not just Ms. Marvel, it's Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel. It's Jane Foster Thor. Like, we have to distinguish it.
Son of Superman.
Yeah. So.
That also brings to mind of the whole Doctor. I don't watch Doctor Who anymore, but when they make Doctor Who a woman, the uproar that occurs over that. Why?
You've had 12, 13 iterations of a man.
Yeah.
You're going to get a woman, and it's going to go back to a man at some point. Enjoy these stories.
They didn't delete the stories when they made a woman. You can still go back and watch those. You just have to get on pause now until another Doctor.
If you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. I know I've had to told this in the podcast at one point. There was a gentleman who was like one of the biggest Transformers fans, but he was a fan of the 80s Transformers. But he continued to buy the modern toys. He continued to watch the modern cartoon series, and all he would do is just dump on it. Hate watch them, because they weren't his Transformers. I'm like, well, they're not.
Well, maybe it wasn't made for you.
It's not made for you. You've grown up. These shows are being made for fans of today,
right?
And they're going to morph and change. The new Teen Titans that I read in the 1980s with Marv Wolfman and George Perez is not the Teen Titans that became that animated show in the 2000s that is beloved, that didn't become that sitcom Teen Titans Go a couple of years later that is also beloved by an even younger audience. Yeah. But I still love those characters and I can still enjoy it even though it's not necessarily for me anymore.
I just don't get people that... I mean, I say this and I'm such a non-fan of the Star Wars prequels, but at the same time, I don't know... I've liked subsequent Star Wars things. I don't know. I think that it just didn't work for me. But the people that just immediately hate because it changes, I'm like, man, I don't want to. I love Batman. I freaking love him, but I don't want to read the same 3 stories over and over. I want it to change and give me different perspectives on that character I love.
The 3 of us weren't necessarily fans of episode 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
But I love what was created.
Yeah.
And it allowed people to build stuff after that.
Absolutely.
That give me some type of reverence for 1, 2, and 3,
well,
even if they
1,
weren't
2, and
great.
3, now we're getting an Obi-Wan show.
I saw that trailer. I'm so excited. I think we're going to watch it
I got
3 or 4 times.
Goosebumps and tears when I saw baby Luke on the side. I could barely take it. No, I think you're right. With the prequels, the Clone Wars, that cartoon is just fucking monumental. And it doesn't happen unless George creates that world and other people play in that sandbox.
And we moved to the modern television shows, you know, and people that were kind of dogging on the Book of Boba Fett. I'm like, hey, we're building something here.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't speak to you, even if you don't like his portrayal, if you don't like this, whatever, let's just kind of work with it, watch it, enjoy it, don't enjoy it. Let's see where it goes.
I was saying to a friend, and we're almost in need of wrapping up this episode, but a Book of Boba Fett, it was not my favorite of the modern Star Wars things, but I trust Dave Filoni so much.
Yeah, where he's going
that even when he's kind of gone, I don't like that. Usually, what he's created has paid off massively down the line. So, play around, brother.
What are we building? Let's see where this goes.
Yeah.
Let's see what we're gonna get out of this.
And everybody quit bitching. Just sit back and enjoy shit. Because guess what? They could take Star Wars away and we don't have anything anymore. And then you're really gonna bitch. All right.
They could make everything the Christmas special.
Could they really? I would actually like that. Can you imagine how much fun that would be?
Don't forget to deploy. They want to get 45 stars on Hoth if you haven't already.
Okay,
we've got about
Star Wars Galaxy here. I think I already did all mine this morning when I got
Okay,
up.
yeah, I just noticed that I just deployed now, and they noticed they had the note to get it because we're about to get all all stars on that level.
45.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
I hope-
Boys, it is so good to record with you again and to talk Star Wars Galaxy Heroes. We'll be back next week, more episodes. Until then, everyone have a great rest of your week.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Well, let me see where